Hello, everyone, and welcome to the first episode of our interview series at Saved by the Plate. We're here at Frank White Memorial Garden up in Harlem, and I'm here with my good friend Gabe.
Hey, folks.
Why don't you introduce yourself?
That would help. I'm Gabriel-José Maldonado. I am my nickname is Gabe. Folks know me as Gabe. My pronouns are he, him. I'm the environmental program horticulturalist for the Brotherhood Sister Soul, and I'm also the land steward for Frank White Memorial Garden.
Wonderful. All right, so tell me how you got involved with the space.
So let's dial back a little bit. So I used to be an educational intern at the Brooklyn Botanic Garden. That's kind of where I kind of started. At first, I was it's funny. I ended at the Brooklyn Botanic Garden as an extension program for an internship through Bank Street College of Education. That's when I was working on my master's program. And I, was looking into a new venture or a new perspective around museology, and thinking about moving from, working with books and antiquities and photography, archives. I always wanted to be a curator, and I had a wonderful advisor who kind of steered me in a different direction around thinking broadly about what is it like to be in a museum, and thought about moving away from like looking at live objects, right, and what that could look like. And so the Brooklyn Botanic Garden kind of opened that door for me, and that's where I kind of fell in love with nature, the environment. I always joke with folks, I was notorious for killing my dad's plants. And so it's kind of like a circle of life here where I'm like, I've gone to gain a more great appreciation of like, I could actually say that, I have a better green thumb than my dad now.
Yeah.
So, but we're being in that space and elevating and then the Brooklyn Botanic Garden also investing in me and my career pursuits. I was with the Brooklyn Botanic Garden for about maybe, I want to say 3 to 4 years. I was a baby, still growing, and in that sense of trying to learn about myself and where I wanted to do as a full-time career. I left the Brooklyn Botanic Garden when I was just as their the assistant coordinator for the Discovery Garden, helping with exhibition design and programming and teaching a spectrum of different folks about what it would look like to be in nature through a very kind of this inquiry-based approach.
Cool.
And I was on the hunt, looking for a space to call home, right? And I stumbled upon the Brotherhood Sister Soul, and then from there, they had asked me if like, would you be able to take on a space, a growing space, and to kind of help amplify our voice, amplify the food that we grow here. And it was such a blessing in disguise. And I've been with this organization now and stewarding for this particular garden for 7 years.
Wow, nice.
So it's been a very interesting growth to be in this space where I'm like, wow, I steward this garden, and as much as I pivoted from like this kind of museum world, but I still kept this essence of a curator, and I help curate green spaces.
Love that.
And so I'm in a space now where not only am I stewarding this garden, but I'm helping to help other community gardens and help other folks in the community around the same kind of beauty and passion for nature.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
So it's funny you bring up full circle, because my mom showed me this picture recently of me as like, I had to be like, I don't know, 5 years old, maybe 4 years old, of watering this plant. And so like it's also fun doing like this business, because it's making me realize, oh, I guess I've also come full circle. So yeah, it's funny how things happen. Okay, so what do you enjoy most about spending time in your garden?
Um, the tranquility a little bit. It's like, we're like a little hidden oasis in
Mm,
Harlem.
agreed.
There is a little bit of like a breakaway from the city. The rustle and bustle, as they say.
Mm,
There's a peace of mind here. And also what I've interestingly fell into is engaging with people. I'm an introvert, you know.
I would have never
Don't
guessed.
I'm a wallflower. You're not gonna catch me in a large setting. If you do, I'm that awkward person in the corner. Like,
Gotcha.
what is he doing? like,
Oh, yeah, yeah.
um, you
I'm the
know,
kind of person who would go up and talk to you.
you know.
Yeah.
Um, so for me to be in a space in a community garden where I'm going to be engaging with a wealth of different folks in the community, there's a certain love there, and I think I've also attracted that through the level of engagement that I was always doing with working at the Brooklyn Botanic Garden, where
Mm,
you're community outward facing, right? You're always engaging with
right.
different folks, either from the littlest to our elder,
Yeah.
and kind of getting a relationship where everybody on the block will know you,
Right, exactly.
either by name or by face. I
Right.
think there's a general sense of, and I think that's also kind of what shapes community a little bit.
Agreed.
There's like a clear definition of what community is, but for me, when folks ask me what a community, you feel it.
Mm, agreed.
There's a sense of warmingness there, and I think that's the beauty about doing this work. It is taxing, but it's a labor of love. Um, you know.
Absolutely. This is why I love community gardens because community is the first word. It's all about building that community. Yeah. So, do you have a favorite memory, favorite story you'd like to share from your time in the garden?
Favorite memory.
We can come back to the question if you want to.
I mean, I guess we could definitely revisit this again, but I
Okay.
think maybe for me, just right off the bat, my greatest times are in the summer.
Mm,
That's where I get to engage with youth heavily through the extension of the Brotherhood Sister Soul, where we have
yeah.
like a 6-week program where we're working with young people, and it is like you're seeing them every day,
Right.
Monday through Thursday, 10 to 5. It's a really rigorous program, but that's where we get to really build camaraderie, really this kind of this sense of love and community, and this sense of like um, where they get to really get to understand each other more,
Hmm.
because like I gotta wake up in the morning and I see this guy's face. you know so I don't know, everyone's like, not everyone's a morning
Yeah, yeah,
person,
I get that.
but then when you come into the garden, it's like a different sense of um where you get to really it changes your mood
Absolutely.
instantly,
Absolutely.
because you could be riding the train, whatever that might happened, and or something happened on the block,
Mm,
but when you come in here,
it all fades away.
it fades away, and I feel like there's a sense um of a sanctuary, or like feeling safe,
Agreed.
whatever that looks like, on the because actually safety could look differently for different folks,
Yeah.
but I think that when it comes to community gardens, there is a leveling field,
Hmm.
you know.
Agreed. Um, how do you think the garden could attract more people or increase involvement?
I think community garden and increasing involvement. Um, Actually, can you repeat that question again?
How do you think the garden could attract more people or increase involvement?
Um, Purely existing.
I love that answer.
I think, and I say
Uh,
that, I mean, say that jokingly, but also it's just like there's a sense of like, um, I think it's a lot. There's a lot from what I engage a lot in people, and I think that everyone has a different perspective around green spaces
Mm.
in the sense of like how we interact.
Agreed.
Because there are some folks that will see, you could be totally new coming into the community, and we're like, you're kind of like hesitant even going into a space because of like, there's this sense of like, is this for me? Am I allowed to be here? Am I like
Right.
trespassing?
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
That is also the kind of this New York mentality, of like,
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. Mentality for sure.
of like where you're coming from. It's just we're all just like, hesitant. It's just like, but I think there is like a release of like.
So how do you usually find out about garden events or activities?
Okay, so learning about gardens and events and activities, I would always say sometimes that can be challenging. Really the varies between gardens. At least for us, it's having a footprint, right? I think I guess I'm talking about two different perspectives. If you're someone who's actually stewarding in a garden, the best ways is like it's just having a digital footprint. Honestly, I was someone who was like not on Instagram. It was like a decade of where like you couldn't find me, So, but I made one in the sense to help to take this garden to the next stage of really community engagement, because that's just where it is. Social media is a part of our lives, and if it's used intentionally in the right way, of course.
Right.
But for folks that are on the outside, right, like looking in, I think it's very much like going to a lot of networking events and meeting people. The farming community is very small. I've gone into spaces where I'm like, of course, Shay, like we'll just like we'll see each other.
You see me a lot,
and you'll see people by face. Sometimes you'll just know folks know by name.
Yeah.
But I think that's also about the beauty around a small world, but also about the interconnectivity of like folks being able to meet each other. But learning about it's like finding out, going to the Green Thumb website, looking at the map. Also, I know that can be hard to navigate, but because things can get kind of lost in the mesh a little bit. So I think it's about finding someone who's like really rooted, who's a liaison, like myself. I always say I'm an asset for the community, and I can help you like find the right person. Each community garden is very different too. I think that's also something to be understood, is that there are Green Thumb gardens, and then there's gardens that are run by the New York Restoration Project. There are gardens run by like the Manhattan Land Trust.
Yeah,
there's the EPA.
Yeah.
And all this is all because it's all based on land, and who owns that land. That's just where we are in the landscape of New York City, and how land is being managed. So it's about really talking to the right people within your community, talking to your neighbors, finding a compost drop-off sites.
Yeah, that's part of the reason I come here.
So I think finding the right drop-off site, right? Yeah. Finding those tall green toters, y'all. Those are the symbols of community composting. Yeah, I think that
agreed.
When you find, and I think that's the beautiful introduction to community gardens. I think even more than now, especially if you are someone who is composting, opting into the curbside composting, right? And really being intentional about that, but also looking on the sanitation website and finding that map. And that's where you can find your community gardens. Or I would say even go into a farmer's market. Most popularly, for folks that are tuning in around for New York City, is the Union Square market. But that's where you can really find the right assets. And then there's like folks like Grow NYC, which is also connected to the green market system, and just finding those folks. But I think the best introduction to learning about community gardens is just composting. And I think, Shay came on the perfect day in terms of having the opportunity to chat today. Is just really centered around our community composting event that we have every second Saturday. Yeah. And I think that's the window. It's just finding your your local events, the little niche areas where folks are really doing this kind of grassroots work.
Yeah, so one of the things that I was suggested to do on the website I'm building is to have a event calendar for all the community gardeners to add their events to, because
Yeah.
it's so hard to find out about all the events going on in the city.
Mm-hmm.
And I agree with that.
They get lost.
Yeah.
You know, like for me, I was just saying before, like as someone who is doing this work solely, you know, it's just, you know, here we wear many different hats. And
Yeah.
so, you know, I moved from doing a lot of flyering, and then I put a Google form, and now I'm kind of transitioning to Eventbrite. Definitely in a very experimental phase of just trying to increase my engagement and trying to reach more folks. And it's hard, believe it or
is
not.
very hard.
You know, as much as like we say, it's like, oh yeah, we're here, we're existing. It's just, I can meet folks that have been living in this community for many years and like said that, you know, I never did, you know, I decided to step into this garden and didn't even know that all the wealth of things that you're doing here. And I think it's also just kind of like, that just speaks to the New York City culture a little bit. We're all siloed, you know, we all are just stuck in a routine. And I think that community gardens, if folks are just more open to the accessibility of it and investing it more in these green spaces, building more of these green spaces, then I think it will change the New York culture a little bit.
Definitely.
Because we're just in a very capitalistic industrial complex. We're always in the grind.
Agreed.
Community gardens is where we can come to slow down, you know.
Speaking of capitalism,
Yeah.
what is the average cost in terms of upkeep for the space?
Ooh, average cost. Okay, so this is where I think this is the struggle, and for community gardeners. I will say in the general, but also I'll speak in terms for us, right? I think that Frank Boy Moore Garden is serving as a model for a lot of community gardens, right? So think about ways in which you can partner or work with another nonprofit organization, either it be a church or a school, right? But also, you know, navigating that, but within some intention, right? Because you want something that's gonna follow through with vision and goals,
Right.
And like-minded folks, right? It depends on what you are setting yourself up for, and you know, for us, Frank Whitemore Garden has been blessed in terms of having this kind of relationship with Bro Sis, and where a lot of the funding the work that we do here is to also invest in the garden space, right? There is a very interesting symbiotic relationship that we have, right? And that's where I feel like I wear two different hats.
Yeah.
You know, I have a lot of privilege and power to say that, like, I get paid to do this work, right? And working for Bro Sis and be able to steward this land. But then on the flip side, there are a lot of community gardens that, I mean, honestly, it's just, they don't get paid at all. People are doing this voluntarily. And I think that's also just speaks to their ambition, their dedication. And then you have a lanternfly on site. Another pest of New York City.
Yeah, absolutely. Pardon the pause.
But yeah, you know, it's that also something that I think needs to change a little bit, because I think there's a narrative shift that needs to happen in regards to green spaces, and it's this. I think that we're not just gardeners, y'all.
Yeah.
We're farmers.
Yeah, agreed.
Folks are doing this work. We're growing food with the intention of feeding our communities, feeding our neighbors, feeding our families, right? You know, I think one of the benefits of having such a green oasis here in Harlem, right, it just speaks to the issues that we're addressing: food insecurity, right? Access to fresh food.
Yeah.
We should be having more green spaces, having more people invested in farming in New York City. You know, investing in a Whole Foods is not going to solve the issue. You know what I'm saying?
Agreed. Agreed.
Like, who's going to be paying that kind of money for a tomato?
Right. No one.
Where you can get an heirloom tomato right here.
Exactly.
So and totally for free. I think that's also something unique about our space is that everything that we grow here is for free for the community to harvest. I teach folks how to harvest because there's also like a beauty about this kind of like relationship with the land and having this kind of level of reciprocation, right? Understanding at how these are all living things, y'all. And I think that we need to have a more, and so much of like, because us as a society, we take, right? And I think that is something beauty about being in green space and farming that we understand a little bit more of like, how do we give back? Because plants know how to do that.
Right.
And if we know how to like prune or cut or harvest from a particular plant, there's a reason why it comes back even stronger with a more plentiful, and more being able to harvest out so much more, because of there is this mutual understanding. I mean, I talk to my plants. I don't know if y'all do, but
you're crazy if you don't talk.
right, it's the quite opposite, y'all.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah,
love that. So if you were to change one thing about this garden, what do you think it would be?
Change.
I know change is a hot topic. Some people like it, some people hate it.
I welcome change, but through the eyes of our young people. I think
True.
that this is a garden that has changed in many years. It has changed over the span of from when I was here, stewarding this land for 7 years now, right? I think that we went from 5 raised beds to like 15 raised beds.
Mm-hmm.
We went from having like 2 hot boxes, the ways in which we process food scraps, to now 4.
Love
right?
that. And now you guys build them for other spaces too.
Yeah, we build them for other spaces. We also create more seating, but I think the beauty about this particular garden is that we've seen, I don't see change. I see it evolving. I think those are 2 different things.
Yeah.
Or they are the same. But, we used to have a gazebo.
Wait, really?
Yeah, we used to have a gazebo.
Huh.
Yeah. We used to have a gazebo where all the raised beds are. But we took that down and then we opened it up for more space, right? We used to have a stage. But now a beautiful mural is being manifested by Ray, who's our artist in residence now here at the garden. And so there's like, we're open to that because I think that's also just speaks to community, because community can change too. But I think there's also something about understanding that change. Because I think there's also different ways in which change can look like. I think that's why I think it could be a hot topic.
Yeah.
Because, gentrification is something that does impact community gardens.
Absolutely.
It can change the landscape of the community, right? This is a traditionally Black and Latin community. While we welcome a lot of different new folks coming into the community, I think about, but how we're also sustaining the community that's already existing, right? And creating more of a sustainable community where we're not pushing people out, but we're uplifting the community in a way that's also keeping people's jobs, not pushing people out in such a toxic,
right.
Through rent, through resources, right? And I think that also just speaks to the work of community gardens. Community gardens, I mean, I don't know how other folks feel about it, but when you're a steward of a community garden, that also carries many titles and also carries a lot of responsibility, and depending on how you see it. I see myself as an organizer. I see myself as an activist. I see myself as a storyteller. I see myself as a composter. I see myself as a farmer, because you're going to be interacting with a lot of different people, and I think that's also what helped me to kind of pull me out of my introvertness.
Yeah.
I'm a Virgo, so and I think that, but it's also an earth sign. So
hey, y'all are always grounded with each other.
So we're always grounded in this work.
Yeah.
But it's about balance, and I think that's the beauty about green spaces and why we need it more. If anything, green spaces will help stabilize communities. I think that it is the groundwork of this that will help to combat things like gentrification. I think that because there's a lot of generational wealth that can be built and legacy building
Yeah.
that can help in a green space. As you can see from our very symbiotic relationship that we have with Bro Sis, that all the young people that come through this program, we had one young person who helped build the stage a decade ago, and to see it for so many years, like, oh my, created such an agency of like where I built that, people are able to use it for events and this and that, but then to see it come down, yes, it impacts them, but then also to see something that helps to rebirth.
Yeah,
right?
agreed.
And it's about us and trying to invest and thinking about ways in which, why maybe something this had to come down for a given reason, but also how can we move to now building a mural, right? I think that's what's welcoming. But that also builds generational wealth because now they're actually able to contribute to the mural. And there's a sense of identity in the mural.
That's true.
Right? That speaks to legacy. That's how we build. But I hate for communities to change, because I think the last thing that we want is like to see the names of people on our street signs, but then when you look at the community, that's not a representative of that.
Agreed.
Right? I think we've seen that, the testament of like places like in East Harlem, see the greats, Tito Puente, all these things of like naming people, but I'm like, but then it's like, what happens to all the Puerto Ricans that are used to live in this community?
Right.
That also just speaks to how they were pushed out.
Right.
So I think that green spaces is where the vibe is.
Yeah.
This is where we can bring people together and
Agreed.
have these conversations.
Agreed.
These tough conversations.
Agreed.
Well,
those are the questions I wanted to ask.
Awesome.
Anything else you want to say?
No, I think yeah. I think that invest in community gardens, y'all. I love this work. Come to Franklin Road Garden. I'm Gabe. I'll be here. There's also a wealth of other folks that are stewarding this land as well. I think that this is a really great launching pad for everyone to understand community gardens and really to chop it up.
Yeah.
Let's talk about plants. Let's talk about revolution. Let's talk about politics. Let's talk about identity. Let's talk about culture. Because I think this is a beautiful. This is like the safe space to be able to have those conversations.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, thank you so much, Gabe. I really appreciate this.
I appreciate you.
Come visit Frank White Neighborhood Garden on 143rd. Yeah, 143rd.
Yes, 143.
Between Amsterdam and Broadway.
Yes.
This is the end of our first episode of our interview series. I'm Shay Bouchles at Saved by the Plate. Thank you so much.
Bye, y'all.